Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Chav Ches Amud Beis, starting with Chav Ches Amud Aleph at the new Mishnah. The subject of the Mishnah is Chametz she'ovar alav haPesach. That means Chametz that existed during Pesach and now it's after Pesach. What is the din with such Chametz? Says the Mishnah. Chametz shel nochri she'ovar alav haPesach. If it was in the possession of the Gentile during Pesach, then that chametz that now exists after Pesach is mutter behano. The Mishnah states over here it's mutter to get benefit from it, but the truth is it's also mutter be'achila. Only the Mishnah mentions that it's mutter behano because of the Seifa. Says the Seifa, V'shel Yisrael osir behano. Because if it was belonging in the possession of the Yisrael during Pesach, that chametz is osir afilu behano. Not only is it osir to be eaten, but even to get any benefit from it. Shenemar. Now the Mishnah brings the following support. It says in the pasuk, Lo yeiroeh lecho seor. There's a lav if a person has chametz in his possession, that it shall not be seen in his possession, meaning to say that if it belonged to him, then that Jew is oiver a lav di araisa. From here, the Chacham say, if he's oiver bal yeroeh on Pesach, then they will give him a knas. They will goizer a knas for chametz she'ovar alav haPesach. Ask the Gemara, Mani Masnisin, who is the author of our Mishnah? Lo Rabbi Yehuda, v'lo Rabbi Shimon, v'lo Rabbi Yosi HaGalili. Not any of these three Tanoim. Now the Gemara brings a lengthy brisa to explain each shita. The Tanya, it states in the brisa, Chametz bein lifnei zmanoi bein la'achar zmanoi oiver alav belav. If there's chametz that either before the zman, meaning to say from the time of chatzois until tzeis hakoichavim, that means before Pesach itself, or after Pesach, then it'll be a person who eats such chametz is over alav, or has benefit from such chametz, is also over alav. However, toizmano over alav belav v'kares. Di Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, however, if it's chametz that he either eats or gets benefit from it on Pesach itself, then he's going to be chayiv kares. Di Rabbi Yehuda. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. On Chav Ches Amud Beis at the top, Rabbi Shimon argues, Chametz lifnei zmanoi la'achar zmanoi eino over alav b'loi klum. If it's bifnei zmanoi or achar zmanoi, there's no lav. Meaning, however, he does learn, the Mefarshim explain, that after chatzois until tzeis hakoichavim, there is no iser hana, but there is iser achila. However, during Pesach itself, he agrees with Rabbi Yehuda that if a person who eats or is getting benefit from the chametz on Pesach itself, he's not only over alav, but it comes with it a punishment of kares. And the same time that it's osir be'achila, it's also osir behana. The Gemara points out, ason netanakama. This statement that we just quoted, that the time that it's osir be'achila, it's osir behana, that, the Gemara points out, is the Tanakama, the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because Rabbi Yehuda says, between chatzois and tzeis hakoichavim on Erev Pesach itself, one is over a lav of both achila and hana. Whereas Rabbi Shimon, as the Mefarshim point out, we just said, says that there's an iser, not a lav, but there's an iser of achila before Pesach, but there's no iser di'araisa of hana, only midirabanan. So therefore, this statement the Gemara points out is indeed the words of Rabbi Yehuda. The brisa continues. Rabbi Yosi HaGalili Omer Tmo al Atzmecha. He directs his words to both Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. He says, it's a wonder upon yourselves. Heich chametz osir bahana kol shiva. How can you say that chametz is prohibited during the whole week of Pesach? Granted, there's an iser of achila, but hana. Now the brisa continues. Uminayin La'oichel chametz mishesh shos ulamala. Shu oiver beloi saase. And from where do you know that a person who eats chametz on Erev Pesach after Chatzois, that he's oiver aloi saase? That Rabbi Yehuda indeed says he is. Shneimar brings a pasuk, Lo soichal alav chametz. You shall not eat with it, referring to the carbon that is brought on Erev Pesach, bein ha'arboim, after Chatzois. Di Rabbi Yehuda. From the fact that it says you shall not eat with it, the carbon Pesach. So here he learns out that the chametz itself cannot be eaten on Erev Pesach, and therefore there's a lav lo soichal. Omar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon turns back to Rabbi Yehuda. V'chi efshar loy markein. Is that possible to say v'haloi? Kvar ne'mar loy soichal alav chametz shiva as yamim. Toichal alav matzos. That pasuk goes on to say, you shall not eat chametz for 7 days. You shall eat matzos. And therefore, it means to say lechara that the not referring to the sacrificing of the korban Pesach, but rather eating of the korban Pesach, which is only done at night. Although the shechita is done bein ha'arboim, but the achila of the Pesach is at night on Tesvav, Leil Pesach. Im Kain, he says, Matamu loymar lo soichal alav chametz. So then why does it say lo soichal alav chametz? B'shah sheyeshnoi. At the time that there is bekum achol matzah, then get up and eat matzah. Yeshno b'kol toichal chametz. Then you also have the obligation to then eat everything. I'm sorry, b'bal toichal chametz. Then you have also the prohibition of chametz at the same time. But the time that you don't have a requirement to eat the matzah, namely leil haseder, eino bebal toichal chametz, you also don't have a prohibition, a lav from eating the chametz. My time with Rabbi Yehuda, the Brisa goes on to ask, what is the reason Rabbi Yehuda? Tlasa kroi, the Gemara explains, my time with Rabbi Yehuda rather, Tlasa kroi ksivi. He has 3 different psukim. Lo ye'ochel chametz. Chametz shall not be eaten. A second pasuk, v'lo machmetzes lo yisochelu. V'kol machmetzes lo yisochelu. All chametz you shall not eat. And the third pasuk, lo yisochal alav chametz, that we just quoted before. Chad lifnei zmanoi, v'chad la'achar zmanoi, v'chad letoich zmanoi. 3 different psukim, referring to 3 different times. One before, one after Pesach, and one during Pesach. Rabbi Shimon Chad L'Toich Zmanoi. Rabbi Shimon points out that pasuk, the latter one that you quoted, the pasuk of V'chol Machmetzes Lo Seichelu, that pasuk states over there, Kol Machmetzes Lo Seichelu, V'kol Moshvoseichem Toichlu Matzos. So comes along Rabbi Shimon and says, V'chol Machmetzes Mi Boili. We need that pasuk. L'Kiditanya Einli Elishinichs Machametz Me'alov. I only know if something becomes chametz, becomes leaven on its own. Then it's something that you are not allowed to eat. You're prohibited from eating it. How do I know if it comes from an outside source that comes and ferments, causes the leaven of this item, that is going to be osir be'achila? So therefore, in that pasuk when it says that pasuk is coming to say, you shall not eat even that which become leavened by something else. Lo ye'ochel chametz mi boilei. I need the pasuk of lo ye'ochel chametz, because like the Tanya, for that which Rabbi Yossi Haglili taught. Rabbi Yossi Haglili oimer minayin lepesach mitzrayim she'en chimutzo noeg ele yom echad. How do I know that during the time when they left Mitzrayim, there was only an Easter, a prohibition of chametz for 1 day, unlike Bizmanenu, afterwards, for all the generations, it was 7 days of Easter chametz. Talmud Omer, it says lo ye'ochel chametz v'samech lei hayoim atem yoitzim. The same pasuk as lo ye'ochel chametz, it has a smichus to a pasuk nearby that says on this day that you went out. Mashma, on the day itself, there's a prohibition to eat chametz. Mashma was a 1-day prohibition. Rabbi Yehuda machmas dover acher minale. Where does Rabbi Yehuda, however, then know that if you have something that became leaven from something else, that it will also become iser be'achila? Mida'afke rachmana beloshin machmetzes. He said the fact that it says the word machmetzes in the Torah itself, that itself comes to say that it requires even something that has become chametz from something else to be aser be'achila. To Rabbi Yossi ben Alei, Galilei ben Alei. For Rabbi Yossi ben Galilei, where does he know that one day of Pesach was an iser of chametz at the time that they left Mitzrayim? From the fact that it makes the smichus of hayom. In other words, the fact that it already taught what he uses it for, that you need it for one of the zmanim of Isra Achila, but there also is a smichus. So you have two different limud. That second thing, that smichus teaches me that it's one day. Or, smuchin lo darish, or he doesn't darish smuchin. And indeed, he argues on Rabbi Yisrael HaGalili that even on the time that we left Mitzrayim, there was 7 days of Isra Achila of terms of the chametz. Omar Mar. The Gemara now brings back what we said before. Minayin lo'oichel chametz mishei shos ulamala shehu oiver b'lo sase. Quoting the Bryce that we said, where do we know that when a person eats chametz after chatzos on erev Pesach, he's oiver eloi sase? Shneimar, says Rabbi Yehuda, loy soichal alav chametz. Div Rabbi Yehuda. Omar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon then said to Rabbi Yehuda, "V'chi esher lomer, can you say that? V'haloi kvar nemar loy soichal alav chametz shivas yomim toichal alav matzos." Rabbi Yehuda shapir kamer le Rabbi Shimon. The Gemara now asks, but Rabbi Shimon's response to Rabbi Yehuda is a good response. L'chara, it's saying that it's continuing to talk about the eating of matzos, which seems to imply, therefore, that it's only therefore, just like the eating matzos begins at night on Leil Tes Vav, that is also when the prohibition of eating chametz begins as well. Answers the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Lach, Rabbi Yehuda would defend himself by saying the following. This comes to teach me that there's an obligation even bizmanenu, although we don't have a carbon pesach bizmanenu. And the pasuk says, umatzas umoror yochluhu. That means together with the carbon pesach you will eat the matzah. So you'll think I only eat the matzah when there's a carbon pesach. When there's no carbon pesach, maybe I don't eat the matzah. I have no chiyuv di'araisa to eat the matzah. And that he says, this is coming to teach me otherwise. When you have the psukim coming together and says that over here, eating matzah together with the prohibition of chametz means as long as there's a prohibition of chametz, which is ledari daris, even when you do not have a carbon pesach, you do have, yes, a mitzvah achilas matzah. So therefore, even when there is no carbon pesach, there's still a chiyuv v'chilas matzah, as we learn out from the Easter of chametz. For Rabbi Shimon, so then where Rabbi Shimon know that you have a chiyuv to eat matzah, even though there's no carbon pesach, and the pasuk by carbon pesach says, umaru yachlu b'yachad, they're going to eat together the matzah umar, together with the carbon pesach. So therefore, how do you know that you have a chiyuv to eat matzah when there's no carbon pesach? According to Rabbi Shimon, answers Rabbi Shimon, nafkalemi be'erev toichlu. There's an extra verse, what seems to be superfluous, ba'erev toichlu. Why did it say ba'erev toichlu? To emphasize that even when there's no carbon pesach, you have a chiyuv midi'araisa to eat matzahs on leil pesach. Rabbi Yehud mi boile, what does he do with the word mi be'erev toichlu? L'tame v'shoye b'derech v'choyker. For those who cannot bring a carbon pesach because either he's tamei mace, or he's so far that it makes it so that he cannot go ahead and come to Yerushalayim and bring carbon pesach. So there's something called pesach sheni. He's allowed to bring the carbon on the 14th of Iyar, 1 month later. So I might think salke daitoch. Since he doesn't eat the carbon pesach on Yudalid ben Nisan, because he is either tamei or is b'derech rechoika, therefore matzah or moro nami lo nechel. He doesn't eat the matzah or the moro either. Kamash malan, he does, but erev toichlu matzah is a tzivu midiaraisa, that he still eats the matzah on Leil Pesach on Yudalid Nisan. Rabbi Shimon, tamei v'shaya b'derech rechoika lo eats drich kro. He doesn't need a pasuk to teach him that a tamei and somebody who's derech rechoika will eat the matzah and the maror on Yudalid ben Nisan. Because the loy gora my arel ben nechar. They are not worse than the arel, the one who is uncircumcised, and the stranger. Because the chsiv, it's in the pasuk v'chol arel lo ye'achel. And there's a similar pasuk gabe the one who is a ben nechar. It says that he shall not eat boy. Hu eino oichel aval oichel hu b'matzah bar. Boy, he shall not eat it, the korban pesach, but matzah or mar he does eat, and therefore that's already included. So from there, if it's true by the oral and the ben nechar, then certainly the one who is tamei and derech echoika is no different, no less. Rabbi Yehuda ksiv behai of ksiv behai. Rabbi Yehuda says it's written in both places. It's written in regard to the ben nechar and the oral, and it's also written separately in regards to the tamei and the derech rechoika.